Let's talk about Atticus Finch's closing argument from To Kill a Mockingbird. To begin with, let's talk about space and the context of this particular speech. Our speaker is Atticus Finch. What do we know about Atticus Finch? He's an attorney. We know that he has been assigned to defend Tom Robinson in this particular case. And we know throughout the novel that he has a very strong moral compass. We also probably want to keep in mind that he is white, defending a black man. His jury is his audience. It is made up of all men. They are all white. Some are farmers, some are not. And because of the context of the novel and things that we are told throughout the course of the novel, we can assume that all of the men in that jury do have racist viewpoints. In this case, Atticus's purpose is very clear. It's to convince the jury to find Tom Robinson not guilty. And because of this trial, that's his exigence, this text would not exist if he were not a part of this trial. All of those things work together to lead Atticus to writing a closing argument. Because it's a closing argument, you know there are certain things you can expect. It's going to be logical. It is going to include information from the case, and you can just expect that knowing the kind of text that it is. So what about the larger context? The novel is set in the 1930s in the South, specifically in Alabama. So we know we are dealing with racism, Jim Crow laws, segregation. All of those attitudes are prevalent throughout the novel. And we also know that this is for a rape case. So all of those things are going to have an impact on how Atticus approaches this particular text. So as he begins, you'll notice throughout his argument that he treats his jury with a great deal of respect. He needs to have this jury on his side because he is asking them to do something that goes against all of the social attitudes that they are used to. He wants them to treat a black man as an equal. So he's very careful to call them gentlemen, to treat them with respect so they will see things his way. He does approach this as a logical argument. This is a closing argument. So he begins by talking about the evidence of the case. Later on, he'll talk about the witnesses in the case. So he is handling a very emotionally charged topic in a very logical way. This makes sense for his purpose. Now, does that mean that he doesn't talk about race? No, he has to. In fact, he says this case is as simple as black and white. This is actually a nice little bit of dual meaning. Yes, it is about innocence and guilt. And as the evidence shows, Tom Robinson is innocent, so it should be black and white. But it is also about race. So when he says it is a case of black and white, that's because it is on both levels. Now, as you move through his speech, you will notice that he does use some emotional appeals. One of the emotions he talks about specifically is pity and feeling bad for Mayella Ewell, who is the white girl who's accused Tom of raping her. He calls her a victim, that she's a victim of poverty and ignorance, but he also does remind the jury that she's white. And so because she's white, even though she is living in poverty and she isn't well educated, she still has an advantage over Tom Robinson. He also compares Mayella to a child, that she has done something wrong that she doesn't want to be punished for. But by putting it in terms of the fact that she's a child, he's not saying Mayella is a horrible person. He's saying she made a poor choice and now is trying to avoid the consequences of that choice. That's another emotional appeal. We're supposed to feel bad for Mayella, but he does point out that the evidence of her offense is Tom Robinson. So yes, her desire to avoid consequences is understandable, but the evidence is a person. So yes, she did something wrong. It doesn't make her a bad person, but we can't let her ruin somebody else because of that. Then he moves into talking about the people who have given evidence in the case, including her father, Bob. And here's where Atticus makes another very wise choice regarding his audience. Bob Ewell is a neighbor of all the people on the jury. And yes, the people in Maycomb look down on the Ewells because they are the very bottom of the social ladder, but they are still white, which puts them above Tom Robinson. So he never comes out and says that Bob beat his daughter, but he strongly implies it. He says Bob is left-handed, Tom can't use his left arm, but he never says Bob Ewell is a bad person, he beats his daughter. He's very careful to just imply it because, again, he's got to keep his audience in mind. They may very well beat their children. They may beat their wives. We don't know. So he doesn't explicitly say he did this, he's a bad person. He just strongly implies it. He also, at this point, uses some parallel structure within his speech or within his closing argument. He's talking about the people who've given testimony in the case. He's implying that they've lied. He hasn't said it explicitly, but he says they've lied. And then he says to the jury that you gentlemen would go along with them on the assumption, the evil assumption, that all Negroes lie, that all Negroes are basically immoral beings, that all Negro men are not to be trusted around our women, an assumption one associates with minds of their caliber. So he's implying that the witnesses are bad, that they're not educated, that they're not smart. But again, he doesn't say it explicitly. But here's our parallel structure, that all Negroes lie, that all Negroes are basically that all Negro men. And then he echoes this parallel structure in the next paragraph because he says this, this is a lie. It's not just all people are not bad. You know the truth, and the truth is that some Negroes lie, that some Negroes are immoral, that some Negro men are not to be trusted around our women, black or white. Parallel structure mirroring the previous parallel structure. But this is a truth that applies to the human race and to no particular race of men. This goes back to his original statement that this is a case of black and white. It's not just race, it's just human nature that makes people good or bad. Then, as he moves into the last part of his speech, he appeals to American values. Specifically, he talks about Thomas Jefferson and refers to the Declaration of Independence. The people in his jury are proud Americans. They're proud Southerners. So, of course, to call on the Declaration of Independence, one of the founding fathers, is going to have an impact on them. He talks about all men are created equal, which makes perfect sense in the context of a trial. He wants the jury to see Tom as an equal. But he makes the point that not everybody is equal. We know all men are not created equal in the sense that some people would have us believe. Some people are smarter than others. Some people have more opportunity because they're born with it. Some men make more money than others. Some ladies make better cakes than others. Some people are born gifted beyond the normal scope of most men. So the thought might be, okay, but then why bring up Thomas Jefferson and all men are created equal if you're going to say all men aren't equal? But so here's his reply to that concept, that there's one place where all men are created equal, and that institution, gentlemen, is in court. So what connection is he making between the Declaration of Independence and Tom Robinson? That because Tom Robinson is an American and is in court, he should be treated the same way that any other person would be treated, black or white, male or female. For his jury, this is a radical concept. For us, in our modern perspective, it's like, well, of course, it's a court of law. He should be treated equally. But in the context of the novel, this is a far out there idea. And then he ends again with the idea of American values and calling on the jury to be the good people that he knows they are. He says, I'm confident that you gentlemen review without passion the evidence you have heard. I trust you to use your logic and not your emotions, because this was a very emotionally wrought case, lots of tension because of the racial aspect. So he says, I trust you to put that to the side and to use your logic. So if his purpose is to convince the jury to prove to vote Tom Robinson not guilty, does he achieve his purpose? No, he does not. If you've read the book, you know for a fact that he does not, and you know what happens to Tom Robinson. However, when you are looking at a text from a rhetorical aspect, you are not going to know the outcome for the most part. You're going to be given a text, and unless you do research, you're not going to know if they achieve their purpose or not. So you have to look at the purpose within the text that you are given. With that in mind, do I think this is an effective piece of rhetoric? Yes, I do. Even though he did not achieve his purpose, he made very smart rhetorical choices, specifically regarding his understanding of audience. And that would be the approach I would take. That would be my first main point, that he truly understands his audience and provide examples of that. The other aspect I would discuss is how he structures his argument based on logic rather than emotion, and how that helps him to achieve that purpose, that we need to put the emotions to the side and just think about this from a logical standpoint. Did he achieve his purpose? No. Is it still good rhetoric? Yes. And that's my analysis of Atticus Finch's closing argument.